Hey, this is Dave Pryor. Welcome to Agile 2019. We're here in the Leading Agile booth. Dennis Stevens, our chief methodologist, is here. Dennis, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, good. Happy to be here, Dave.
In the middle of the lunch break, so if you hear noise in the background, that's what it is, because folks are coming by for lunch. Dennis is giving a talk tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., bright and early, with an incredibly long title. Assumptions and ambiguity be damned, develop a strategy to embrace change. And what would you like to say about that? What can you tell these folks who aren't here that are going to miss your talk? Like, what's the nugget that they're going to miss? The biggest nugget.
I think the most interesting thing that we're saying is people are looking to do Agile development, Agile product development in organizations, and they're not experiencing actual adaptability in the marketplace.
Okay.
So what happens is we're still doing linear sort of strategic planning and linear sort of portfolio management.
Okay.
And there's no feedback loop. So I'm going to talk about what does it look like to actually build those loops into your organization.
Okay. So where you just went with that was kind of weird, because I was thinking people want to do Agile development.
Yep.
And they don't acknowledge that the rest of the company has to make the switch.
That's right.
But you're talking about when the product goes out the door in the market.
Well, because it's a continuous cycle, right?
Okay.
So I'm building, trying to capture customers. I'm trying to learn as I'm going. If I am
delaying the customer,
if I'm shipping the wrong things, if I'm, so it's all those feedback loops.
So what kind of things should they be looking at?
I think the big thing, and what we're talking about with the assumptions, I think what we tend to do is we tend to just guess at a problem we're trying to solve for a customer in the market.
Right.
We make believe that we know what the right solution is for that problem that the customer wants to buy.
Okay.
We fund it,
Yeah.
and we throw it over the wall into a software development organization, which there's then no ability to adapt. Those assumptions weren't made explicit. There's no ability to test those things. We end up in big enterprises building long delayed big things, take too long, too much functionality, and still being the wrong thing. Because when I get it on the development side of the world, I have to build everything you might mean by that, because I can't validate the assumption. I don't even know what they are.
Okay.
There's no way to pivot even if something was wrong.
But if I'm a big company and I've got this big product that I want to roll out, I don't want to roll out like one tiny little piece of it. I don't want to just launch like the account management tool if I haven't built everything else.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some, I think that's not entirely always true. I think we try to build everything that might be needed by it before we've even confirmed the validity of it.
What we decide the MVP needs to be.
Yeah. I might not need to ship it in everything to validate it.
Okay.
Right. So I might want to be able to go and test it before and make sure it's the right thing. I might want to be able to drive down my risk on adoption and drive down my risk on how I'm going to implement it before I make the full investment.
Okay.
Most organizations aren't set up to do that, though.
So when you say risk on adoption, that's going to mean not just understanding if the product itself is wanted, but how easy it is for them to take it in.
Yeah, for them to use it. Does it solve a problem? Is it interesting? Do they want to pay for it?
Okay. And can they get, even if they want it and they want to pay for it, the people whose hands they're going to put it into have to be able to cope with it.
That's right.
Okay. So I did a training at an organization building stuff for the military. And one of the things I learned was that they had just released something, part of a targeting system for artillery. And I asked, what's the feedback loop like? And I said, well, we can't talk to the people in the field. In 17 months, it'll be deployed. Like, when you get the feedback, we don't get the feedback.
Right.
So what do you do with something like that? I mean, that's a very extreme case, but how quick should they be getting feedback? What if they can't figure out how to do it?
Yep. I think there's a couple of different ones. I think in those products where feedback is really, really necessary, those things sort of at the front edge of your competitive advantage, right? The things that you're doing that are unique. If you don't have the feedback loops, you're going to get beat in the market.
Okay. And
so you have to have them. If it's something like an accounts payable system or an internal system, it might not be as critical.
Okay.
Right. But there are things where
there is no competition.
Because you're not in a competitive space. You're doing it internally, or you're. But if it's at the forward edge where you're competing, you have to have those feedback loops. What happens today is strategic planning groups are operating 3 years ahead of the organization.
Yeah.
Annual funding processes are taking place 18 months before the projects get spun up, and then the projects happening real time. There's no structure in an organization set up to make those assumptions explicit. Okay. To feed them through for learning with the intent of adapting and adopting as you're going.
Okay. I'm going to try to figure out how to take notes without banging into the microphone. So with the assumptions thing, this is a question I've asked other people, and I have never gotten the answer that I was really looking for. But are you suggesting that we should maintain like a separate assumptions backlog, or should that be part of a regular backlog? Like, how do we keep track of that stuff, and how do we prioritize the assumptions?
Yeah. So if you look at, I'm gonna go down a little bit of a path with this.
Sure.
But if you look at the concept of sort of epics, features, and stories,
Okay.
and you look at how most people use epics, features, and stories in software development, product development, Agile. Epics are really, really vague. Features are a little clear. Stories are really super clear. In my mind, an epic should be an assumption
Okay.
that we have a problem that's worth funding
Okay.
for a customer in a market that we want to compete in. So,
Okay.
so I can now go say, so what do I have to do to prove this epic to be true?
Right.
And I can create some backlog around that and go work that down.
Okay.
Features are, do I have a solution to that problem the customer wants to use that I can build effectively? Right?
Right.
And then I can go make those be work I can do around that feature, go drive that down, make that be explicit. And then stories are work I'm actually building to deliver.
Like tactical work the team can do.
The design to execution.
Okay.
The design to implementation. So when we treat everything as design implementation things,
Yeah.
we're never validating it. But
Yeah.
if I understand the intent of an epic, who needs to be in the room to have a conversation around it,
Okay.
and how I can validate that my assumptions are correct and make that be part of my process,
Okay.
part of my governance model, I can solve for that.
So the epic is like a business problem or a business guess. We understand this thing.
It's a problem we think a customer is willing to pay for in a market that we want to be involved in.
Okay. And are you suggesting then that companies fund by epic?
Or you can fund by value proposition, which is a bigger sort of chunk in the marketplace. It's a position in the market. So you can have initiatives or value propositions broken down to epics, to features, to stories.
Okay.
The thing about the value propositions or the epics is there's some sort of an OKR, there's some sort of clear, measurable outcome
Okay.
that you're going for, which sets the bound on it.
So what are common OKRs that people would use for something like that?
An OKR for a market could be, I increase the number of people using my product, I increase the number of people purchasing my product, I increase my purchase price for my product by adding more value in it. That might be an epic level.
And those are going to be lagging indicators to tell us whether or not our assumption was correct.
Yeah, and so that's why it's so important that they're small and constrained and you're going after it early.
Okay.
Because what you don't want to do is you want to find the cheapest way to validate that assumption before you build the whole thing.
Okay. So if they're funding by initiative, like give me a time range for that.
So this is interesting. I think an initiative could be 3 or 4 years in duration. It could be within the next 3 years, we're going to have this position with this customer in this marketplace.
Okay. And then the epic would be
the epic would be, what am I doing the next 90 days
Okay.
to go prove that I can accomplish that position in that market with that customer.
Okay. And that kind of goes back to the thing we've talked about previously, which when you said it, it kind of like felt like somebody smacked me in the head about prioritizing to learn.
Yes.
So always testing and trying to figure out is this the right thing? Is this the right way to go about it? Do people want these features? How can we make it easier for them to use it? And I would imagine also, are the OKRs valid? Are they the right things?
Are they even testable? Are they even the right things?
Okay.
Yep. And what are you validating for? What we do today is all of the assumptions get validated down at the point of execution.
Yeah.
And there's no chance to actually adapt. So we talk about pushing the complexity all the way down to the delivery team.
Okay.
And they don't even have the ability to make some of these trade-offs if they needed to. They don't have the agency to change it. So we want to get very intentional about making sure the work that gets to them has been validated to be good work for them to do.
Okay. So it gets to them, they're going to figure out how to do it however they do it. We're going to have some way of measuring whether or not this thing proved out to be true or false.
That's right.
And I'm imagining that there has to be a little bit of craft in how you put the epic together or how you decide what assumption you're going to test, because if you're just trying to prove yourself right all the time, the bias is going to get in the way.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of craft in validating it. Yeah, and we don't want to come up with a measure which is just validating what we already believed. Right. So but here's the thing, we're operating in scarcity, we have to operate fast. I have to have some rules for making sure I'm shooting at the right target all the time, making sure I'm spending my dollars the next most valuable thing.
Okay.
And so this concept of market, customer, problem, solution, design, implementation, and being explicit, there's assumptions in every one of those tiers.
Okay.
I don't want to be down at the expensive stuff to the right, design and implementation.
Yeah.
If I have a lot of outstanding stuff to the left, I want to validate it as inexpensively as possible up the stack.
And how do you prioritize that? Is it by risk?
I would absolutely drive it down based on market risk and then implementation risk.
Okay. And when you say implementation, we're talking about cost, we're talking about burnout of the team, we're talking about capacity planning and all the other things that go along with that.
Yeah, I had a client about 20 years ago that was building a product that by the time that they delivered it to the customer with all the ancillary supporting things they needed to do around it, they were losing about $500,000 for every implementation.
Wow.
And the product guy goes, well, we'll make it up in volume. And I had to explain to him,
no, you're not going to make that up in volume.
There aren't enough people in the world to get past the cost curve on making this be valuable for you, right? Because it costs this much to deliver it every single time. There is no economies of scale.
But then couldn't you focus your efforts on how do we reduce the waste in the delivery process?
Could have, except it was the support of it that was so expensive. It was they had people manually reviewing things, making decisions about how to. It was an equities trading thing, but it was very expensive to provide the support. And it was the customers really wanted this thing.
Yeah.
They wanted to spend very little money to get this really, really rich support system underneath them.
So you would have to figure out a way to make it easier for them to use, more digestible in some way, something like that.
At the time, the sort of artificial intelligence you would need to make available just didn't exist. Okay. So it had to be people figuring it out.
Okay.
And it cost that much and took that much time to support it every single time.
Okay.
So they had never validated that they could deliver it profitably. Customers wanted it. They were demanding it. This is great. You sold it to us. We want to build this commodity brokering sort of platform. It's very exciting to us.
Right.
But it was going to bankrupt the company that was building it.
Okay, but if I'm at that company, all I hear is customer demand, customer demand, customer demand.
That's right.
I have to respond to customer demand, and we're supposed to be agile, so let's just keep doing stuff until they all take it.
Nope. They have to validate that they can build it profitably. So they had to go create a different demand from the customer. They had to find a way to deliver something that was just good enough for the customer would buy it, or maybe it was just a bad product and market to be in entirely.
But that's a level of depth or awareness that I would think a lot of people don't have. They know the customer wants something. Let's figure out the thing that delights the customer. So we come up with a solution. We see that they like it. Developing it profitably is a different set of questions.
Yeah. So
we don't often think about because we're just delight the customer.
That's right. It has to be explicitly built into the governance model as part of your process.
Okay. So
it has to be something you're doing on purpose, not unintentionally. So we talk about a very intentional, disciplined governance model.
Yeah.
To make sure those questions are asked and answered at the right time with the right information.
So one of the coolest things about interviewing Dennis is I always have questions in the back of my head when he talks, and sometimes like what just happened was I found a way to circle back to it. So to take this down to like a tactical level for somebody who's watching this, if I'm a product owner at some company, and I like what you're saying, and the rules that you talk about, I need those rules.
That's right.
And I want to make sure that we're focusing on delivering it profitably. But I'm just a product owner, and I don't have the agency in the organization. I don't know how to figure out how to create that conversation with stakeholders.
That's right.
I don't know how to get them to think at that level, other than hiring LeadingAgile to come in and help them figure it out.
It's not a bad solution.
Okay, well, but is there anything they can do to get started down that path, even if it's just to figure out what questions should we actually be asking to get to that market sensing data thing?
I think there are smart people out there that if they really stop and look at this, like in my talk tomorrow, I'm going to give a little bit of a frame for how to think about the problem and how to define the governance model.
Okay.
So these types of questions and decisions need to be made at this point in time.
Yeah.
It's expensive to make them late. Right?
Okay.
It's expensive to find out you can't deliver it profitably after you've built it and sold it.
And you've still got to convince people that because they just want to go chase the shiny thing.
Yeah, so who do you have to get in the room to agree on the definitions of the rules of the game, the governance model?
Okay.
Right? How do you make the governance model not be overhead and slow things down, but it actually becomes how we move decisions through the organization with the right people involved? Because we're going to make the right decisions at the right time with the right people.
So one risk I see here is that if I'm the product owner and I'm trying to create this conversation, I may very well be destroying my own ability to get this product built in the company.
Could, yep.
Which is,
if it's a bad investment, that's a good decision.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say we would probably argue that that's always the product owner's job is to find a way to make if their thing is unnecessary, if we can't do it. Prove to me that we have to do this thing.
Yep, they're all economic bets, right?
Okay.
So we got to make it be some. We're building something for a market we want to be in, for a customer we want to please, right? Solving a problem they won't solve that we can solution, design, and implement profitably.
So if I am somebody who's coming to product ownership from the or management and from the Steve Jobs is who I'm going to be when I grow up school.
Yep.
He's going to demand, just do it, make it happen, forget about the cost, and we're going to end up with the Lisa again or something like that. People like that who understand what everybody needs and say, just forget it, just build it, we'll figure it out later. That's where a lot of people want to go.
Yeah.
You've got to slow them down a little bit.
Well, and also Jobs had the agency to make those decisions, and Jobs took the financial hit if it failed.
And it impacted him pretty strongly for a while.
It was his money, right?
Yeah.
It was his reputation. If I'm a product owner in an organization and I don't have any skin in the game, and I'm pushing stuff through, you don't have the right to make those decisions.
Okay. So you said you're going to offer a bunch of suggestions about these conversations. Like what's for the folks that can't make it to the talk, what is one specific thing that we kind of close on to say, here, this is something you should be paying attention to?
Yeah, the concept around what does a delivery team do? What does a product owner team do? What does a portfolio team do?
Okay.
What decisions do they need to make before work gets decomposed and sent down into the organization for the next level?
Okay.
So getting explicit around this is in fact a problem that if we solve for this customer and we it'll help us get a position in the market that we want. That's an epic level conversation.
Okay.
And making that explicit, what customer, what problem, what market, and how do we think this is going to help us get there?
Okay.
And now at the product owner tier level, we're having conversations about how to go add functionality to the product, features to the product, capability to the product that accomplishes that outcome.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
So
does.
now it becomes very, very explicit. And now I have the context of the customer, the problem, the solution, and I'm doing a design and an implementation that's bounded by that. But I also, if I've made my assumptions explicit, the product owner is validating his assumptions early with the delivery part of the organization. And if it's a bad idea, we're getting that feedback early too. So it's two-way flow of information up and down.
Which is a lot to pay attention to.
It's a lot to pay attention to. So if the rules of the game aren't explicit, and you don't have the meeting set up, and you don't have the cadence of events, and you don't have the actual decisions that have to get made, it's just not going to happen effectively.
Okay. So I want to go back to the decision thing for a second. A lot of people from the traditional background we both come from, we want that RACI chart that says who's in charge of what.
Yep.
It sounds almost like you would need a decision RACI chart. Who has the right to make or the responsibility to make these decisions at what point, so that the team knows this is our call, and business knows, nope, let the team decide that.
Yep. I think it's by team, maybe not by individual role.
Yeah.
It's like what decisions does a product owner team get to make, and which ones do they not get to make?
Okay.
What conditions have to exist for them to own the next decision?
Okay.
What do they have to prove to get there? What decisions does the delivery team get to make versus what are the constraints that are set by the delivery organization? There's another interesting thing here, which is you have all these compliance boundaries in real enterprises as well. And so there's a whole nother set of constraints that wrap around these decision frames.
Yeah.
And I want those constraints to be considered in those decision time frame as well. So when I'm looking at a feature, is this going to require PII validation? Is it likely to impact my performance on my platform? Is it likely to create a security risk?
Okay.
Those decisions need to get talked about before we build it and deploy it.
Okay.
Not afterwards, right?
All right.
So all of that becomes sort of explicit.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hoping somebody kind of knows how it all works.
Okay, now I want to access a different part of your brain.
Yep.
So another thing that I love about interviewing Dennis is he has a very deep background, not just in Agile, but in traditional.
Yep.
Because you just said all this stuff. We need all these checks, we need all these controls, we need all this definition. And all the PMP circuits in my brain just lit up, and I was like, yep, bring it home. I want that back. Give me all that traditional.
Yep.
Start singing those old songs again. So how are we still Agile if we put all that in place? Because doesn't that slow us down, creates a lot of bureaucracy? I can't make a decision, he can.
Yeah. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it slows us down, but it slows us down to the constraints of the organization that actually exist.
Okay.
Right? I mean, if you're moving faster than you can responsibly move, you're not spending money well. At the end of the day, it's about spending money responsibly. Now, what our challenge is as people that are building these governance models, bad governance is check boxes that get in the way that slow things down. I've got to build a model that says, okay, I have to have these people in the room every Tuesday prepared with this information, because this work has to flow through our system.
So I want to say that back another way.
Yep.
The old way we did it, we have this bureaucracy we have to follow, this person gets to pick that, this form has to be filled out. It's a dumb system. It's just somebody set it up at one time because some guy thought it was the right thing to do.
Right.
And if we're being agile in our governance,
Yes.
we might start out with that boilerplate, but we're inspecting and adapting how the governance model is affecting our delivery and reducing our economic risk and all the other things along the way. So we're making changes to that. It's not just locked in by the PMO and this is the way it goes.
That was Alistair Coburn came and waved at us.
I didn't even see him.
There he
He's
is over
already
there.
gone. Alistair comes and goes in a flash. So is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. This is great. So if people want to get in touch with you to find out more about this, if they can't make it to talk.
Dennis at leadingagile.com. There'll be a
Okay.
phone number you can text to get the paper.
Okay. So
Come
there's
to our
going to be
website,
paper
lots of-
published about all
yeah.
this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots
Dude,
of access.
Thank you. It's always, I love talking to you about this stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming by. We'll shake hands. And now you get one of these fabulous t-shirts, which you can only have by being interviewed here at Leading Agile at Agile 2019.
Outstanding. Thank you, David.
Thank you.